Well, we're just talking about some new threats from North Korea today, with the rogue nation vowing to hit the United States in a preemptive nuclear attack. And this warning is coming as the United Nations today voted to impose a strict new round of sanctions after that nuclear test a few weeks ago that North Korea did. Now, North Korea says today it will not hesitate to launch nukes against the United States, warning Washington will be engulfed in a sea of fire. It's just the latest in a string of provocative moves by the isolated dictatorship. We're going to talk more about North Korea next hour. But with North Korea threatening a nuclear attack and Iran moving closer to a nuclear weapon and disarmament talks with Russia at a stall, there are now more questions today about the spread of nuclear weapons and what we should actually do about it as a country. There are 4 top political defense officials writing in the Wall Street Journal op-ed this, saying, quote, "A global effort is needed to reduce reliance on nuclear weapons, prevent their spread, and ultimately end them as a threat to the world." Well, now today we're learning that Jordan is close to commissioning 2 nuclear reactors to be built just south of the Syrian border. Joining us now with more on all of this, Jonathan Schanzer, a Vice President of Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. It's nice to have you on set with us. We usually talk to you from D.C.
That's right. Good to be here.
It's great to have you, Jonathan. So Jordan is saying, listen, we're going to build these nuclear reactors, but saying to the United States, we're not going to sign any agreement that we can't enrich uranium, which would be a step to getting nuclear weapons. What does that say about where we're at with nuclear weapons appearing in the Mideast or elsewhere?
Right. Well, I mean, what we're watching right now is what people have been warning about for quite some time, and that is this concept of a nuclear cascade. We look at Iran right now getting closer and closer to a nuclear weapon, and you have a number of Sunni countries throughout the region, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and now Jordan, all wanting to make sure that they're not left in the dust. Of course, if Iran goes nuclear and they're enemies of these Sunni states, well, then they're going to be defenseless. So you have a number of these countries. Also, Egypt has talked about this in the past. They're not exactly in an economic position to do so, but the idea that any of these countries might be looking to start to go nuclear, that's obviously of great concern, given the fact that the region is not exactly the most stable. So
it's not only the Middle East, though. We see North Korea that already has a nuclear weapon making these threats. This op-ed piece from the Wall Street Journal that we mentioned had a series of writers, our viewers probably know the name Henry Kissinger, best of them all, saying we need a path to, they're making an argument really about disarmament, you know, making nuclear weapons go away in the world and having the United States really lead that process. Is that possible? Is that a policy that we can pursue successfully?
Well, this is the policy that President Obama has set forth, trying to imagine a world without nuclear weapons. The problem is that we need to remain strong here in the United States. We need to be the policeman because really there's no one else out there. What you need is stable democratic countries that have the ability to deter countries like North Korea or Iran from going nuclear. And the only way to do that is to project strength. It's not, we're not able to deter these people through diplomacy or through sanctions so far. And so you need to be able to lead through strength.
It's ironic that we get these threats from North Korea around the same time we get this op-ed about disarmament. We mentioned Jordan when it comes to nuclear weapons, which they are not saying they're pursuing, but they're pursuing this nuclear reactor. Jordan came up in the news today because we have this report that the CIA seized bin Laden's son-in-law after being deported from Turkey. Can you talk us through a little bit about who this guy is and what we think happened here?
Sure. It's kind of a complicated story, but his name is Suleiman Abu Ghaith. He's been based in Iran. A lot of people find that very surprising that there would be al-Qaeda members operating out of Iran because Sunnis and Shiites aren't supposed to get along. What we learned from the 9/11 Commission report is that Iran has long harbored al-Qaeda operatives there. Well, he left, this son-in-law of bin Laden, part of the inner circle of the al-Qaeda core, so to speak, and went to Turkey. The Turks flagged him, and then from there, after a few weeks, determined that it was time to deport him, but they were not going to extradite him to the United States, despite our requests. Instead, what they said is they were going to deport him to Kuwait, which was where he had last held a passport, but they were going to deport him via Jordan, where we have an extradition agreement, and so the CIA was able to nab him in Jordan.
How big of a catch is that?
Well, I think it's potentially a very big catch. This is a guy that probably knows the inner workings of al-Qaeda. I mean, I think he's been more of a spokesperson publicly, but who knows what he learned from his father-in-law. And so one of the things that I think it's a great catch. Obviously, it's getting one more high-profile al-Qaeda operative off the grid. But wouldn't it have been wonderful if the Turks had quietly handed him over to the United States, not made a big deal about this, and then possibly given the United States leads to be able to go after the financing and other key figures within the al-Qaeda network.
All sorts of nuances on that. Interesting. Get the spokesperson. It's like a media relations person. We can understand that, right, Jonathan? But a catch all the same. We'll see what we learn. Thank you so much. Nice to have you as always.
My pleasure.